Hello, my name is Aquilina Mendez-Faulkner, and this is my week 5 presentation. In narrowing down my crisis, I will be discussing the scenario of wildfire taking place in Raymert Canyon. This is a rural recreational area about 15 minutes outside of the town of Florence where people hike, ride quads, fish, and camp. In Arizona, the average wild bush fire travels about 14 miles per hour. So assuming that the fire was traveling southwest, it would reach the town in about 2 hours. The county has 2 DC-10 fire planes that will assist with air support, making drops of fire retardant, one being every 17 minutes. Each drop does cover a radius of 300 feet wide by 1 mile long. With wildfires, the goal is not to put the fire out with trucks and water hoses, such as residential fires. The goal with wildfires is to keep the fire away from any residential areas and create barriers so that the fire can burn itself out. If a wildfire were to break out in Raymert, there is no immediate threat to individuals as far as residential dwellings. There would possibly be maybe 100 or less people out there from the camping and quadding, but there are no residential dwellings out there. But based on preliminary facts, it would only take 2 hours to reach the town of Florence, which does have a population of 26,205. Considering the proximity to the town, the goal is to have the fire extinguished or redirected within 60 to 75 minutes. Due to the remote location, the concern of the wildfire aftermath would be damage to the ecosystem and displacement of wildlife. A recent study by the University of Las Vegas revealed that a full recovery of a desert ecosystem after a wildfire could take up to 65 years. Multiple services and agencies will be impacted and involved in this wildfire, starting with various emergency personnel, local government agencies, nonprofit and volunteer organizations, as well as local businesses or others that may be on standby. For my timeline, I selected 3 minutes, 3 hours, 3 days, and 3 weeks. So let's take a look at the various leadership styles during these time frames. Within the first 3 minutes, a park ranger has been notified by a civilian that there is a fire. The ranger is going to take an autocratic leadership approach. They are going to take immediate action by contacting local authorities for assistance and instructing others that may be either camping or hiking or quadding in the area to exit the area. This is a very straightforward, direct approach of legitimate authority. She's not asking, she's telling individuals to move. Within the first 3 hours, the DC pilots have been flying for about 2.5 hours and have dropped a total of 8 loads. They, in conjunction with the ground crew, have created a successful fire barrier between the fire and the town, redirecting the fire in a different direction. These men are strong servant leaders who must have a steady focus. They have ultimate power as they are the ones flying the planes in the sky, but due to limited visibility, they must trust and rely on the ground crew to radio when and where to make their drops. Within the first 3 days, the local FEMA volunteer emergency crew is on the scene to offer support to firefighters. The team lead has a democratic leadership style and takes a very, collaborative approach with the group and with tasks at hand. The main goal is to provide food and drinks to the firefighters as they rotate in and out of their shifts. This leader is going to solicit feedback from her fellow volunteers to ensure that they're all just giving their best to the emergency personnel. By the 3rd week, the men are getting tired. They are feeling the stress of the fire. They may be getting discouraged and burnt out. So the fire chief, while throughout he's going to display many leadership styles, definitely at this time, he's going to have a very charismatic approach. He's going to need to rally the men, encourage them by empathizing with them and paying attention to their physical and emotional needs at this stage. For Chapter 1, I chose servant leadership. Looking back at the DC-10 pilots in the 3rd hour time frame, these individuals must work as a team, giving their all to others. There is a big emphasis on ethical responsibility to their followers because the ground crew needs the pilots just as much as the pilots need the ground crew. The chosen article highlights 3 themes in servant leadership as 1, believing in people, 2, serving others before yourself, and 3, demonstrating receptive, non-judgment listening. Looking back at the female volunteer leader in day 3, her collaborative approach is a leadership style in and of itself discussed in chapter 2. As a leader, she focuses on partnering and goodwill. This leadership style is very common when building community and the goal enhancement of the common good. The chosen article highlights the need for collaborative leadership in emergency situations, specifically from FEMA and the Department of Homeland Security. In addition to servant leadership, the DC-10 pilots in the 3rd hour time frame demonstrates the leadership management exchange theory that is discussed in Chapter 3. This theory focuses on ongoing relationships between leader and member of their team. They must have mutual respect, perception of what the other is capable of, and loyalty. The chosen article highlights the positive and potential challenges of this theory, but stresses the importance of the dynamic interaction between the leader and the follower. Chapter 4 brings us back to our fire chief in week 3. In order to rally his men and keep them focused and in the battle, he has a charismatic approach towards his men. He relays a realistic, achievable vision to the men with passion and confidence, and an exceptional ability to persuade them to keep going. The chosen article studies the effects of charismatic leadership in 8 fire squadrons in China. As in our scenario, the results show that the charismatic leadership is a 4-factor structure for the higher performing administrators. At the onset of the fire, within the first 3 minutes, our park ranger has taken a very autocratic lead, but while she is the leader of her immediate setting, she cannot put out the fire herself. This requires network leadership, which is discussed in Chapter 5. So in the past, the park ranger has met with other agencies and has worked out a resource sharing plan for emergencies. All leaders in the network have a common good objective, therefore enhancing trust amongst the leaders in the network. The chosen article poses the question on if network leadership matters and points out why emergency management leadership is ideal for this theory due to necessity of collaborative efforts and the impossibility of a single agency being able to handle an emergency disaster. Circling back to our fire chief in week 3, his charismatic approach is backed by integrity. Chapter 6 lists the 3 most common hallmarks of integrity as honesty, trustworthiness, and fairness. As history has shown, the 2, charisma and integrity, do not always go hand in hand. But for the most part, and in this case, they do. It's because of his integrity that the men can believe in what the fire chief tells them, and not only makes the men believe in him, but also want to follow his lead and complete the task at hand. The chosen article discusses the importance of ethics in organization and points out that the absence of integrity within a leader would be catastrophic. Taking another look at our park ranger in the first 3 minutes, she taps into the complexity leadership theory found in Chapter 7. This theory is based on chaos. It emphasizes that there is or can be a constant radical change in an unstable or complex environment. According to the complexity leadership theory, leaders in this type of environment must demonstrate 3 leadership styles at once, or have 3 different leaders working together with these styles. That being 1, an administrative leadership, 2, adaptive leadership, and 3, enabling leadership. The chosen article points out that complexity leadership theory is the shift toward the new era of leadership due to social processes being too complex and messy for one individual or one pre-planned approach. The leader must be able to adapt and react to the situation as it evolves. Lastly, Chapter 8 discusses Van Oort's leadership action cycle. This cycle is a 9-factor cluster consisting of the leader's competencies and behaviors. The leader will take many factors into consideration when first assessing the organization: their own constraints, abilities, as well as the constraints and abilities of the team members. Looking at our FEMA volunteer in day 3, this assessment has highly impacted her leadership approach to ensure everyone's abilities are maximized. The chosen article by Van Wart and Campuco discusses crisis management competencies and highlights the leadership action cycle when associating competency with situational context. And that is my presentation. Thank you for your time. God bless and have a great weekend.